Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's 15-minute logistics webinar. Our topic today is the next step. I am LV Spencer. I'll be your host today, and I'm the logistics lead for the Southwest and Rocky Mountain Division. On the screen there, you should see my contact information. So if you have any questions about this webinar, about future webinars, please feel free to contact me, and I'll try to answer your questions as soon as I can. Today's topic, we're going to focus on what's the next step. A lot of people, everybody on the webinar should have completed the logistics overview course, and oftentimes when other people do take the logistics overview course, they always ask the question, well, what's the next step? What do I do now? The logistics overview course that we have for the American Red Cross is a very broad and very general course. It's at a very high level. It basically covers the different activities and the organization of the logistics group, but it doesn't tell you what you need to do next to be actively involved as a logistics worker. So what I would like to do today is share with you a document that I have prepared for the Texas Gulf Coast region, where I teach the logistics overview course, and I try to share this document with people at the end so that they know, well, now that you've completed the course, just don't go home and do nothing, but you need to be involved, and we need for people to become active workers within the logistics group. So I want to share that document with you today and to go over it with you and show you some of the things that we encourage people here in the Texas Gulf Coast region to do. On your screen, you should see the document. It's titled What's Next, and it's just a congratulations letter that once people have completed the course. You'll notice some of the information here may be a little bit outdated. As I look through here, I see some terms that may have been outdated. But we want to encourage people after they've completed the course to be an active worker. We want them to be active as a logistics volunteer. So we need for them to go into the Volunteer Connection or contact the Regional Office of Volunteer Services and make sure that they become a logistics group activity worker. And so they need to do that. But oftentimes they may not know what those different activities are or what's entailed with them. So one of the first things I do is I encourage people to go out to the exchange and to visit the logistics hub and find out a little bit more about all the different logistics activities and what do they do and what's required of, what would be required of them as they do that. So I'm going to click on this first hyperlink here, and I'm going to take us out to the logistics hub. And it looks like I've timed out, so I'm going to have to go back in. And here's the logistics hub, and they've changed some things around as to where it's actually at now. It's actually part of our services, the Cycle services, DCS capabilities, and then logistics. But this page on the exchange is going to give them a listing of all the different activities that they are pretty well qualified to be a part of. And so we want them to get a little bit more familiar with each one of these so they can find out what's the best fit for them. So let's take a look at maybe they're interested in procurement. And they can click on procurement and they can find out a little bit more about it. And also, one of the key things they can do is look at the competencies for a logistics procurement responder. And I'm going to open that up. And here they can look at what is logistics procurement service associate, what training they need to have done. and what kind of competencies are expected of them, and so on. So almost all the different activities are going to have the competencies of leadership and team building, cost analysis, relationships, complex problem solving, technical systems knowledge, and then as you see here, it goes down to supervisor, and then it goes into manager. So I encourage them to go in and look at each one of these. Let me get out here and go back. And then I also encourage them for each of the activities to go in and look at the handbooks and go in and look at the procurement toolkits as well for each one of the different activities. And that way they get an idea of what each one of those activities is involved with. So I try to encourage them to go here, and then the next thing I encourage them to do is I encourage them to look at the logistics neighborhood and go out there and become a little bit more familiar with what's on the logistics neighborhood. So I'm going to click on logistics neighborhood, and I hit a security question. So then I tell them to look at the logistics neighborhood and look at some of these links. You're going to see a lot of the handbooks are out here. Some of those are migrating over to the exchange, so not all of them will be here in the future. And then I encourage them to go down into the different documents that are out here as well. And that way they get a little bit more familiar with the different activities as well. So I encourage them to go out to the logistics neighborhood to find out a little bit more about the different areas before they decided which gap that you want to become a part of. And then the next step I encourage them to go to is to look at the First Responders Guide. And if you go out here, you'll find the First Responders Guide and then the Logistics Checklist. And those two documents are going to give you a little bit more idea of what the different activities are involved with. So I want the new logistics volunteer to become familiar with the different activities, and this is one of the areas that they can do that in, going to the neighborhoods and going to the exchange to the exchange as well. Now, after they've become a little bit more familiar with the activities, then they can register for the online group activities.
The conference is now in talk mode. The conference is now in silent mode.
So we want to make it known what the different activities are, but then they need to get with their Office of Volunteer Services and register for one of the gaps in the, and so that'll show up into Volunteer Connection. And then they also want to, once they're loaded into Volunteer Connection with one of the gaps, then they'll want to go out there and edit their profile. So I'm going to show you just a little sample of a YouTube video that you can go to, and you may not hear this on the recording because of the telephone. But here's a little video that they can go out to and show how they can update their profile and information as well. So there's another way that they can find out a little bit more about how they can update their profiles. So we're going to close that out. And let's go to the next one and see what other things they can do to help learn about their different activities of the logistics group. So in a week or so after they've completed the course, they should see the logistics overview course and in Volunteer Connection where they've completed the course, and then they should also see their where they've signed up in a particular gap and position in Volunteer Connection. After they're all signed up and ready to go with their gaps, then they want to take a look at what do I do for future promotions and future courses that they may want to take. I encourage them after taking the logistics overview course that they also look at the forklift workshop course so they can become a certified Red Cross forklift operator, especially if they have decided that they want to be in the warehouse area. You know, it's my own personal feeling that every warehouse manager should be a forklift operator trainer. Every every warehouse supervisor should be a forklift operator, and then as many as we can of the warehouse service associates should be a forklift operator. If they have an interest in in-kind donations, I know there's in-kind donation workshops they can attend. Those are not presented very often, but when you do have them in your region or chapter, they should try to attend a in-kind donation workshop. I also want to encourage people that, if they can, to try to attend and complete DIST so that they can teach the logistics overview course. It's just my personal feeling that, you know, if you're a manager or a supervisor, one of the things you do is training. You know, if you are a manager, you do training. If you're a supervisor, part of what you do is training. So I think, you know, every supervisor and every manager should attend and complete the DIST course. And if you're a manager and supervisor, then you also need to complete the disaster frontline supervisor course. Then the next thing I encourage people to take is the Form 5266 training as well. And that's a very good course that's going to be for you to become a manager. And I think it's also required for supervisors to take the 5266 course. There's one of the things we're finding in the logistics groups that people need to have a good sound knowledge of computers, and especially Excel spreadsheets, and how to enter information, how to run reports and print out reports and things like that, also how to do email. So I encourage people to also take some online computer training through online, which is free. If you're in the procurement area that people are interested in, then they should probably have access to Request, and they should have a Request login and password. If they don't, they should at least go out and look at the Request sandbox and get access to it so that they can play around in Request and get a better feeling for how to use it when they go out on a DRO. And the last one that I want to point out is the sandbox for the DLC tracker. If you're interested in supply, then I encourage all the logistics supply activity workers to be very familiar with the tracker. When they do go out on a DRO, I do encourage them to ask their supervisors if they can be exposed to the Dramas transportation model, the supply tracker, and Request. About the only place you can get experience in those areas is, especially the transportation module, is when you're out on a DRO. Same thing with the supply tracker as well. So the other thing that I encourage the brand new logistics worker is to contact their local volunteer connection people and make sure that they're signed up for their logistics neighborhood. They also need to be able to make sure that they can subscribe to their logistics group for their site as well. And I think we have time today. I'm going to try to show you, I'm going to try to show you a document here. Let me see if I can get to it. Well, maybe I can't. So I was going to try to show you the Texas Gulf Coast region group site. Another place that you can go out and learn a little bit more about logistics is looking at the pipeline. And so I'm going to take you to the pipeline and let you see where it's at. And basically the pipeline is a document that's prepared by the Disaster Logistics Center at the national headquarters. And it comes out about once a quarter or so, and it hasn't been out recently. But if you go to the MSS, which is the old name for logistics, you can click on these documents. See if I can pull it up here for you to take a look at. And here's an old pipeline that you can look at, and it's going to show you different news articles, and sometimes it's going to talk about some different procedures, like here's the DR feeding procurement procedures and things. So it's a good source for new procedures and also some new innovations or some new things that are happening. So that's the pipeline, so people need to try to be familiar with that as well and things. So what I've tried to do today is give you all a general overview of the What's Next document. I have found it being very helpful in trying to share information with a brand new logistics volunteer, and I try to make sure that they have a copy of the document. And I will be sending out copies of the document to all of the people on my distribution list. One last thing that I would like to cover before we close out today is about updating your availability in Volunteer Connection. It's so important that you do have your availability up to date and you do have your gaps in Volunteer Connection. And there's a link there as to how you can go out and update your availability. A formal part of the webinar for today, I'm going to remain online for another 15 minutes or so to answer any questions that you may have.